we're starting right on time. So I'm getting out of your way and you can go ahead. You have 39 people right now. So Nicole is here and Nicole can help you if you have any issues. All right.
Okay, wonderful.
People to check in. Everyone, welcome. We got 41 people. We have Kelvin Weathers, and I'm so excited. He's going to talk about eradicating racism, even when our hearts are deceptive. Oh, I love that title. So that's exciting. I'm going to get out of your way. You've got 45 people here, and they're coming in. Now you're at 46. All right. See you later.
All right, Dr. Hawkins. Thank you very much, Dr. Hawkins. This has been an awesome conference, and it's been very inspiring. It's been a very informational. It's been a very challenging conference, and I'm thankful for being able to just be a part of it and to have a small part in some way in sharing on this Interrupt Racism Summit. Um, my name is Kelvin Weathers. I'm a speaker, and I'm also a minister and a life coach as well. And today we will, for our time, we want to look at eradicating racism even when our hearts are deceptive. Eradicating racism even when our hearts are deceptive. And this will give some of a similar historical perspective, but the last session earlier today by Pascal. I'm not saying that Miss Edward. She may have touched on some of the things if you were in her session. She did an awesome job in sharing some of the things and dealing with poll taxes and history of racism and all sorts of things she dealt with. But racism has infiltrated every system within American society. And when I say every, I mean every system of American society. And we want to show that we've often treated the symptoms of racism, gerrymandering, redlining, voter suppression, segregation, unfair housing, all of the symptoms of racism that many have looked at, we've looked at over the years. But in order to change the fruit of racism, we have to get with a different root of it. And in order to change that, we must start at getting a different system, a different mentality on how to address the problem of racism. And from a historical, because even in our school system, in our society, we haven't really dealt with racism accurately and properly from African American and Hispanic and Indigenous and people of color. They don't have the right. They don't even get the proper. We don't get the proper information and proper education about the history of the country and the history of our society. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here, and we'll go over a couple things. We're going to look at a couple things, and then uh, if I can work this correctly, um, and they're not. Bevy is not letting me share the entire screen. Have a PowerPoint that I want to share. Okay, alrighty, yeah. So there we go. Eradicating racism when our hearts. Thanks to us. Eradicating racism. My name is Kelvin Weathers. I'm a transformational speaker, minister, and a life coach. But one of the works we're going to cite today, we're gonna use some of the work a cite from the New Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander. It's a powerful, great book that addresses the prison industrial pipeline, and it doesn't just deal with one party or one different group. It really addresses all how the system and the prison industrial complex has affected our society all the way up until now. It's just not a 400-year system. It's a system that comes on and on today. So the New Jim Crow, we'll look at that a little bit. How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. The Cross and the Lynching Tree, James S. Cone. And White Too Long, The Legacy of White Supremacy in American Christianity. We'll address those thoughts. Now, when we look at the symptoms of racism, the symptoms are a part of a larger, really part of a larger complex in that the root of the problem is primarily, I believe, in the heart of people. Um, that's the primary part of the problem is that the root of the problem is primarily what we think about and men's hearts. Because in a book that I've looked at, it says that in even in the scripture in Jeremiah 17:9, it says that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked, and who can know it? It says that man, we don't even we can't even reason in our heart or even know what our heart, and we don't understand even our heart. We can't even fathom what goes on in our heart and in our mind. So a lot of people are today, when we're looking at racism and looking at discrimination and systemic racism, and that's a buzzword and that's a flash word, but to change the heart of men is going to take a long time. That's going to be a long process. And it is really what we want to look at is the fact that the heart of our society, the hearts of men is what's going to have to change, but we have to have laws that are going to have to change in order to affect change. The heart of men is going to take some time because men's hearts are they can't even be really understood of what is in the heart of man. But the laws, and we're going to address at the end some laws that need to be changed, and some of the things that one of the sponsors of this summit, the Greyston Center for Hiring, is doing is really is going to be a great, really help our society a lot. And things like ban the box, where you have those who have a past or have prohibited for certain jobs because of a past and because of certain things, and then we have to look at banning the box and banning certain that you sign or every 7 years when you are part of going for a job and applying. So those are some of the things we have to look at as well. So hopefully my screen is being shared here again. I hope you, if you have a problem, please let me know if you don't see it in the chat. I'm going to just look at something, a historical perspective of the root of racism, a historical. When we look at the transatlantic slave trade and the Euro-American slave trade, a historical perspective of racism. And I'm going to read something from a story that Ibram X. Kendi wrote about. He said, in a story he wrote, he says, her name was Angela, one of the first known Africans in British North America. His name was John, the first known anti-black racist in colonial America. In 1619, this black woman and white man, what they embody, arrived months apart in 12-year-old Virginia, the first of the 13 British colonies that became the United States. Angela was the original embodiment of enslavement, of survival, of the 400-year African American struggle to survive, to be free of racism. John was the original embodiment of elite white male power, of the democracy of races, of its 400-year struggle to survive, to be free of anti-racism. Instead of David and Goliath, African American is the story of the petite Angela hopefully and hopelessly fighting off the giant John from 1619 to 2019 for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. She was perhaps the beginning of hope, the North Star essential to anti-racism. He was definitely the beginning of all that makes her hopeless, the eclipse essential to racism. African Americans have every reason to be hopeful and every reason to be hopeless on this 400th anniversary of our birth in this land. So when we think about that, Kendi said that African Americans have every reason to be hopeful and hopeless in our birth in this land. He says these 22 or 23 Africans, including Angela, who arrived this week 400 years ago, were not the first to land in North America. This is a story from over a year ago. Some Africans probably came before Christopher Columbus during the 16th century. Some probably accompanied Spanish explorers on expeditions to the southwest and southeast of the present-day United States. In 1526, a slave revolt stopped the Spanish from planting a slaveholding colony in present-day South Carolina. According to the historian Thomas C. Holt, a muster roll for March 1619 shows that there were already 32 African slaves in Virginia. But no one knows when and how they arrived. No one knows my ancestors' exact birth date in this country. African Americans as a people are like the enslaved Africans who never knew exactly when they were born. Some people were so young when kidnapped in West Africa, so young when sold down the river into Mississippi, that they never learned their birthday. So some folks chose a birthday, like African American chose a birthday, August 20, 1619, based on the first documented recognition of our arrival in Virginia. A different John Rolfe, married Pocahontas in 1614 and then produced African American's birth certificate 5 years later on this day. Today feels more like the anniversary of the day I was diagnosed with metastatic cancer than a birthday. I live in a fear of a reoccurrence, like I live in a fear that metastatic racism will never go away, that the African American will die off before racism does. Is a hopelessness that has always existed here, even among white people watching the war of worlds between Angela and John. So, let me try rebooting because it's not, my screen is not sharing. Let me try rebooting. Because my screen is not sharing. So let me try it again. Okay, can you? Hopefully my screen is shared now. Hopefully, I hope it's okay. It's shared now. So we want to look at hopefully a historical perspective of the root of racism. I mentioned earlier that the works we're going to cite are The New Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander; How to Be an Anti-Racist, Ibram X. Kendi; The Cross and the Lynching Tree, James S. Cone; and White Too Long: The Legacy of White Supremacy in American Christianity. I read that story Kendi wrote about the hopefulness and hopelessness of in our society. But racism is affecting our society today. It's not just something, even though it's a 400-year problem, it's a 400-year issue, it's affected spirituality or even religion. James S. Cone, in The Cross and the Lynching Tree, he says, in the quote-unquote lynching era, between 1880 to 1940, white Christians lynched nearly 5,000 black men and women in a manner with obvious echoes of the Roman crucifixion of Jesus. Yet these quote-unquote Christians did not see the irony or contradiction in their actions. So